So if you're like me, you're probably getting a little bit tired of hearing about all the doom and gloom that's happening in the job market. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of stuff going on in the job market, with the advent of AI, and all of a sudden, all these white collar jobs are going away. And then you have the angst of college degrees that are no longer getting people those entry level positions and starting them on their career path. People spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a piece of paper that does them no good in the job market. So I'm going to actually share with you a little bit of a different perspective. I'm going to give you 4 career areas across different scopes and different types of industries that, 1, won't be replaced by AI, and 2, really won't require a college degree of any kind. In fact, after a couple of months, you could be actually credentialed, get your license, and off and running. And so that's what I want to talk with you about here today. But before we get started, please do hit that like button and subscribe. So let's first talk about the commercial driver's license. I actually have a Class A CDL. It is actually probably one of the most coveted certifications that you can get, or licenses, I should say, that you can get when you talk about blue collar work. And when you think of all of the different things that you can do when you're working year round, maybe you want to only work summertime, so you could actually work construction industry, hauling maybe gravel, hauling concrete, cement trucks, those types of things. If you want to work more in the fall, agriculture oftentimes has harvest season, so you can work a few extra months in the fall, have a little bit of money, but then when winter comes, guess what? You can change everything over and all of a sudden start moving plow trucks and moving snow and using different types of equipment on the roads. Transportation always happens in our country in one way, shape, or form. And when you think about transportation, it happens worldwide. And of all the things that are out there that AI cannot take away, at least in our lifetime, maybe in 30 or 40 years, but you cannot take away the understanding of how to manage a commercial vehicle. There's so much nuance to it. There's so much feel to it that you can't program, at least at this point in our lifetimes, a robot to basically drive like a human. And just stop and think, every time you go to a gas station, someone's got to drive the gas tanker there. Every time you go to a grocery store, someone's got to bring those groceries there on a shipment, on a flatbed truck or in a box truck or a refrigerator truck or whatever it might be. Every piece of equipment, every car that goes to a car lot, everywhere you turn, somehow, somewhere, some way, somebody has the opportunity to be a commercial driver and move product from point A to point B. And one reason I really, really like the idea of being a commercial driver, and why I've kept my license, even though I don't haul on a regular basis, except for some special projects, is when you think about the credential itself. Very few credentials cost somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 to get. Myself, I actually spent less than $2,000 going through all the training and paying for gas and paying for the instruction and eventually paying for my license. It took me less than 2 months. Now, sometimes it's a little bit more. Sometimes you might spend a little bit more time, but it's much, much less expensive than going to a 4-year college. And you are automatically, once you get that license, essentially if you're 21 years old, especially because you can do interstate driving, you can just walk in, have your license, and automatically be qualified for a high-demand job that you could walk into and easily make $50,000 to $75,000 in your first year. The more you drive, the more experience you get. You could easily clear 6 figures. So when you took, that test, if you take the time and look at what you really get from your input, from a return on investment, 1, AI is not going to take your job if you want to be a commercial driver, and 2, you need about maybe 2 months of practice, time, and a few $1,000s. Really, you could probably do it for less than $5,000, and just enough trust in yourself that you can manage a large vehicle, and all of a sudden you could have a total career shift, be making really some pretty good money, eventually up to 6-figure type money. So the first recommendation I would have for you, if you don't want to worry about AI taking your job, and you don't want to worry about having to go back to college, find a way to make some time to get your commercial driver's license. So the second career that I want to talk about that cannot be replaced by AI is being a real estate agent. As cool as it is to where you can go on, these different websites, Redfin, Zillow, and those types of things, and actually look at pictures, that's all great. But really, if you're going to spend $500,000 on a house, you're going to want to walk through that. You're going to want someone there basically to tell you a little bit about the neighborhood, do a little research for you, maybe negotiate on your behalf. And as with the CDL, at one point in my career, it's been a few decades ago, I actually had a real estate license as well. It's actually not hard to get. You're talking anywhere from, maybe 90 to 180 hours of training. And it depends on how fast you can get that. But in a couple months worth of time and for really less than $2,000, you can make it through the entire training sequence. And then you just have to pass the realtor's exam. Once you do that, the next thing you have to do is really become affiliated with a broker. And then all of the earning potential is on you. How much time, how much hustle can you put in? And don't get me wrong, real estate, that first year or two, you're probably going to be starving because it's not the easiest place to dive into or easiest career to dive into. But when you look at people who have grown wealth in their life over the course of a lifetime, if you can stomach a couple of those down years, because you're just like with anything in sales are going to go up, sales are going to go down. But if you can stomach the ride, that little roller coaster of commission, you'd be amazed at how much money you can make from, again, just a few $1,000s, maybe less than a few $1,000s of training and testing, basically to get your real estate license. But then all of a sudden, it's all on you. And the cool thing is, when you're a real estate agent, everything is a business expense. Your mileage when you go to places, if you do open houses, things that you put out, maybe snacks or those types of things. Partially your cell phone bill, maybe an office in your house. So many of the things, because you're self-employed as a real estate agent, you get that benefit of having those write-offs. And let's be real. Do you really want a robot showing you a house? Do you really trust the robot? Do you really not want that personal connection? And so when you think of the types of jobs that, one, don't require a college degree, that have great income potential, but also that you can't ever 100% push it away onto artificial intelligence, sales is going to be one of those, and in particular, real estate sales is going to be one of those options. All right, so the third career that I want to throw out there for you, if you're worried about artificial intelligence and you're worried about not having to go back and actually get a degree, is thinking about what it would be to become an insurance agent. Now, every state's going to have some nuances to this, but again, for less than $2,000 or $3,000 of an investment into some training courses, and then obviously passing your exams, and maybe 2 to 3 months worth of time, in many cases you can become a licensed insurance agent and start selling insurance. And when you think of stability, this is probably going to be one of the more stable ones along with commercial driving, because when you have vehicles, they have to be insured. If you have a mortgage, which, if you own a home, you got a mortgage, you have to be insured, right? And so there are so many benefits to being an insurance agent, because insurance is a required investment or a required part of owning an investment. And so you're always going to have that stable demand. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be some competition. And just like with any business starting out, if people don't know you're an insurance agent, you're going to have that, first year or two of struggle. So it will be a little bit difficult at the beginning. But once you build your clientele, you get brand recognition, name recognition, insurance agents can easily, clear close to that six-figure income over time. So my last AI-proof job recommendation that also doesn't require a college degree would be for you to look into becoming a public notary. When you think of every home that is sold or every home that is refinanced, before you actually can file any of that documentation to get your mortgage taken care of, all of those documents need to be reviewed and notarized by a public notary to make sure that whoever is signing that paperwork is legitimately who they are. Well, when you think of stability and needing a person to verify that someone else who is signing is physically who they are by looking at their identification and then stamping it and signing it as witness, AI is not going to take that away. And when you look at what it takes to become a notary, really it's a couple months worth of training. Depending on the state you're in, you might be able to get through it within a week or two. Then you just have to make sure that you make time to go take that state certification exam or licensure exam to get your notary stamp. And poof, you're in business. And every house, again, that needs to have a mortgage, every refinance that needs to basically get re-stamped for refinance purposes, they all have to have a public notary signature. And these are just a couple of documents. There are many other types of legal documents that will always need a human witness. And those humans, every time they come to witness, will charge $150 to $200, depending on the situation, the mileage, the time, and those types of things. But oftentimes, a notary can make good money, somewhere between that $50,000 to $60,000 range, by simply doing what a machine can't do. They have to have a human verification. So this not only does not require a college degree, but by law, in most cases, cannot be taken over by artificial intelligence. At least not right now, and maybe in 50 years something will change, but more than likely in our lifetime, this is another perfect example of how artificial intelligence will not take this particular career field, but also it doesn't require a degree to get into. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Hopefully you see it as maybe some options either to go into blue-collar work as well as some white-collar work, professional level work, maybe independent, maybe having your own business, maybe working for someone else, who knows. But hopefully this gives you some ideas on how you can AI-proof your job, but also not have to take 4, 5, or 6 years to go back to college and get a college degree to go into fields that quite honestly will pay very well, that are always going to be in high demand, and do not require any type of college degree and won't be taken away by artificial intelligence. As always, thank you for joining me here on the channel. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and do let me know what you thought of the content today. I'd love to see some comments and get your thoughts. Take care.